Agencies Drinking Beer is brought to you by Proposify, software that helps you deliver beautiful proposals in the cloud and close more deals.
Welcome to the 62nd episode of Agencies Drinking Beer. On today's show, we're talking to Joel Capperella from Philadelphia, and he's going to be talking to us about digging deep to find your story and how to bridge the gap between sales and marketing. Hello, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm Kyle Racky.
And I am Harry Norton.
That's your real name.
My real name is... What is my real name?
Kevin Springer.
Oh, thank you.
K Spring.
That's what you call me.
That's what I call you. It's my pet name for you. So we're going to be doing some traveling soon. You're going to be down under.
Don't.
You don't want me to try to do the accent?
No, don't embarrass yourself.
It's not a knife. This is a knife.
I can't wait to go. I mean, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
Hook up with some customers out there. It's second to the U.S. for our customer base as far as the amount of customers we have. It's amazing.
A lot of Aussies.
Yes.
Thank you, all you Aussies listening.
Thank you.
I think there's quite a few listeners, too, from Australia, according to our metrics on Lisbon, or Libsyn, or whatever that tool is we use.
Yeah, I can't wait to go. I'm going to try to look up a lot of our customers in Sydney. I'll be in the Sydney area I'll be getting in around November 1st, and I'll be there till the 5th, and then I'll be in Melbourne the 6th through the 10th. So reach out to me. Let's connect.
Very cool. You should do it. Anyway, we have a really good this is a really good interview with Joel Capperella.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Very passionate.
Yeah. He knows what he's doing. He has a podcast too, so I always find people that have podcasts, they're really good in interviews. But anyway, no, check it out. We're going to be talking about sales and marketing and fun stuff like that. Before we do that, though, I would like to talk about a blog post that I just launched last week, in case you haven't checked it out. It's all about client onboarding. Yeah, so in the post, what I talk about is we usually think of customer onboarding as being something you see a lot in SaaS, as far as, somebody signs up to a trial. How do you show them how the product works, guide them to become a customer, get that initial little bit of value from the product, get them to what they say is the aha moment, that oh, cool, I see how this works. Okay, now I'm going to dig into it deeper. So that's what good onboarding should do if you run a SaaS product. But really, onboarding isn't just unique to SaaS. It's everything, right? And we think of where the term comes from, likely, it was onboarding a plane, boarding a plane. What does the process look like from when you book the ticket to when you're sitting on the plane? There's some steps behind it,
It's first impressions, too, which are very important.
That's right.
What's your first impression or your first experience?
Yeah, I think of it like opening a new Apple product. It's like the packet. They put a lot of care and money into their packaging to make it all the little touches. Just making it easy to open and setting up your new Mac account. There's a lot of thought into that process. So I was thinking about all these things, and then really, if you're running an agency and you get a new client, do you have an onboarding process? What does it look like? Because I think sometimes people. They sign somebody signs a proposal and they might send them an email and go, hey, great, excited to work with you. Here's Lana or whoever. Here's the project manager. She'll be in touch to follow up and get started. That's not really the best way to onboard a new client. So that's what the post talks about is, what good onboarding should do, I think, if you run a service agency, is remove confusion or doubts so that the client can get kind of a bird's eye view of what the whole project is going to look like from beginning to end. Build trust so that the more the client trusts you, the more likely they're going to, trust you throughout the length of the project. And when your team has feedback or your team creates a design, they're going to be less likely to question it and less likely to micromanage. And it also, I think, removes any buyer's remorse, because they'll feel cared for and appreciated. They'll be happier with their decision to hire your agency if the onboarding is good. Now, one thing I talk about in this post is getting the client to commit before onboarding. Because often happens a client verbally says, yeah, we're going to move ahead with the project. This has happened before at our old agency, and they want to schedule a kickoff meeting. But they didn't sign the contract yet. They didn't pay the deposit. So, do you have the kickoff meeting?
Oh, I remember those days.
This happened once where we did a kickoff meeting, and then we even started some early, design work, and the client backed out. Mm-hmm. Remember that one?
Yeah, well, we're in the Maritimes. We thought, okay, handshake agreement. This guy's really excited. He said, definitely we're going to do it. I remember that project. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah, it's hard because you don't want to start the relationship on a bad foot. So you kind of say, yeah, okay, whatever, your invoices with accounting, there's, they're going to need a few days to process it, blah, blah, blah. Or so-and-so decision maker needs to sign the contract. He's on vacation or she's on vacation or whatever. There's always a reason why they can't commit. But we still have that deadline. We still need to meet the deadline. We got to kick it off Monday. It's hard to say no, but I think you need to.
Agreed.
Agreed. Because it's, business is a two-way mutual exchange, right? So if they can't commit, then they can't expect you to commit your resources. But otherwise, I think, here's kind of a rough layout, I think, for what a good onboarding process looks like if you run an agency, which is preparing for the kickoff meeting. So don't just go in blind. Obviously you call the client. Whoever sold the deal should call the client right after they sign the proposal. And make sure you get the most important people in the kickoff meeting. If you're going to be talking tech, have them bring in their IT person or whoever, because you don't want them, you're wasting everyone's time if you get into a kickoff meeting and the people that are actually making the decisions or have the knowledge you need aren't there.
Plus things will get lost in translation as it goes down the ranks.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think creating an agenda ahead of time is good. Kickoff meetings can get very long and go off topic, especially with the first question when you talk about, okay, give us some background. Especially you get like a business owner in a room and just ask them to talk about their business. They'll drone on for an hour before you get to the real questions you need to ask. So trying to have some sort of agenda, I think, is good. Having it in person if you can. Not all clients are local to you, so you can't always do it. But I think, you always did this good, Kevin, was like if we were having an in-person kickoff meeting, it's like you went to the bakery and got, some nice treats and some coffee and, just being hospitable, I think goes a long way.
It's part of the onboarding.
It is part of the onboarding. Yep. And we hired an agency locally called Mindsea to work on our iPhone app. That's coming out shortly. And one thing they did is we had a really good kickoff meeting with them, and then Bill took us to lunch afterwards and paid for it. I thought that was a nice gesture.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's more to this. In the blog post, I also talk about some of the content that you should be discussing at the kickoff meeting, and then even the first deliverable. So after the kickoff meeting, what does that first deliverable look like? The project brief, the strategy, the work back schedule. I think following through all the way through, like most projects start really good and everybody's happy and excited to begin work. And just as the project progresses, you might have disagreements. The client might have been late with feedback. They might be annoyed at your team for something. Everything kind of just naturally, turns into chaos as the project goes on. So I think it's really important to have postmortems for every project. Like after the project wraps up, especially the person who sold the project, if they haven't been involved, it'd be nice for them to call the client at the end of the project and say, what was the experience like? Sometimes clients are crazy. They might say, I wasn't happy with this or that. It might be legitimate. It might not be, but I think listening is important.
Yep.
And carrying those lessons through to the next project.
Yes, sir.
So check that post out. And now we are going to move on to the interview with Joel Capperella! I'd like to welcome Joel Capperella to the podcast today. Joel is an award-winning marketing expert with over 20 years of experience, and he's been driving sales for companies including SAP and Oracle. Joel is also the host of the podcast Leading Matters and has contributed articles to the HubSpot blog, Huffington Post, and Fast Company. Welcome to the show, Joel.
Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. I love the show. I'm happy to be on.
Great. That's awesome. We're excited to have you. So maybe just kind of give the listeners just kind of a little snapshot. I know I kind of gave a very quick overview, but I mean, what's sort of been your career path over these last 20 years? What kind of stuff have you been up to?
Sure. No, listen, I think it's a fair place to start. I started my career for a software company and slowly moved into product marketing there. And then that was probably in the early 2000s, late 90s, maybe. And then from there, I really kind of found my passion in how we kind of put together marketing in a way that enables sales, but more importantly, connects with who our buyers are in a way that's meaningful to them, right? So I did that for an Oracle company. I did it for SAP in middle part of 2000s, maybe late part of 2000s. I moved over to run a professional services firm's marketing group, and I did that very successfully for about 5 years. And towards the end of that, I love what I do. So, I wasn't kind of getting any younger in my career. So listen, I gave it a shot. I said, I'm going to go out and do this on my own, because one of the things I really enjoy about my work is a variety of helping clients across all different types of products, solutions, services. So 2014, I ventured out on my own, and that's what I'm doing today. And really, I focus in on that larger story that we can tell today, especially with all the media options that we have, and then using that story not only to increase our awareness, but equally as important, enable the sales force, and we'll talk a lot about it today, I'm sure. But, I find that a lot's been lost in the translation of content marketing as far as, we're not serving sales as well as we could be. So that's what I help my clients with today.
Kind of looking over your blog posts that you've written, you tend to talk a lot about story when it comes to marketing and sales. Why do you think that's so important for people? Do you think that a lot of companies, a lot of sales and marketing teams are kind of missing this right now?
Yeah, I do. This is, obviously my opinion. I'm sure there's others out there, but I really do. I call it the tyranny of our marketing metrics, right? And what I mean by that is I think that our technology has gotten so much better over the past 10 years, and the media options have gotten so more accessible to us, that we get kind of locked into those conversion metrics. And don't get me wrong, they're certainly important. But what I think we've lost along the way is that, listen, we serve at the behest of sales at the end of the day. I mean, if a marketing leader is not making sales job easier, is not making them more efficient with how they prospect and get deals into the pipeline, then quite frankly, we're not doing our jobs. So I think if you talk to, matter of fact, I was just looking at HubSpot's State of Inbound report that came out, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. And if you really dive into those stats, you see a huge disparity between marketing, who thinks all this inbound stuff is awesome. And by the way, I agree if it's done the right way. But then sales that thinks that the lead quality that they generate far surpasses the lead quality that marketing generates. And there's a problem there, I think. So that's why I talk a lot about story, because I think that's where we can kind of fix that gap.
So just to be clear there, you're saying that, according to this State of Inbound from HubSpot, that marketers are saying, hey, we're doing a great job, we're producing content, it's driving leads, and salespeople are saying the quality of the leads is low. The leads are weak.
Yeah, basically, right? I mean, that's if you really dive into the details of the data, that's essentially what the takeaway is. That sales thinks, hey, great, your MQL to SQL, and for those that don't know, that's marketing quality lead to sales qualified lead. That's the conversion ratio that we all track. Even though that ratio is great, I'm still much better at getting the deals that I think I can close into my pipeline than you are, right? So there's something, that's something off there, right? We have to fix that. And I think that we could fix that with story.
There's, that's almost that classic rivalry between sales and marketing people. And we're kind of experiencing this at Proposify for the first time, just having those two sides. So for a long time, we were, all of our customers were primarily driven through inbound channels and just, word of mouth and SEO and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We had a little bit of automated marketing in there, but we never needed salespeople. We didn't think we needed salespeople. But then we found that a lot of people were requesting demos, and it just sort of made sense for us to try out getting a couple salespeople in. So last 2 weeks, or I think maybe 3 weeks now, we've had these 2 salespeople and awesome salespeople. But it's like now we're actually starting to kind of see like really the difference in mindset between salespeople and marketers. And it's like, how do you bridge that gap?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just I was on another show recently. I was talking about this very from my personal experience. Being in marketing majority of my career, when I ventured out on my own, I gotta tell you, Kyle, it was an eye opener, right? Like I gained a whole new respect for what salespeople do because I am now not only the marketing guy, but I'm the sales guy, right? So I have to go hunt the business and close it myself. And you're absolutely right. I think there's a marketing is concerned about large, big picture, and then connecting the tactics of the day to day to that strategic vision, right? And that's absolutely important. I don't ever want to mitigate that, right? But what I think we miss sometimes being marketing professionals is that the sales guys concerned about. I mean, look, they're the only one, if you think about it, in most organizations that are entrepreneurial, like honest to goodness entrepreneurial in spirit. Because if they don't close business, they don't get paid, right? So they are literally conducting their own little line of business within the business, if you think
That's
about it
true.
that way.
Yeah.
So how do we make it easier for them to, hey, not just hand them over a lead that the marketing team says, yes, this is a good prospect, and it very well may be. They might be in the right target, they might have the right pain points, they might have budget even, and those are all great things that any sales guy would say or gal would say, yeah, that's all good stuff. But there's a lot of nuance from when I hand that lead over to when the salesperson actually gets that into their pipeline, and most good sales managers won't even want their sales team to put a lead into the pipeline until and unless it actually is a deal worth hunting.
And how do you know that it is? I mean, obviously you're going to have your demographic kind of stuff, company size and whatnot, but is there anything else to kind of turn it from marketing qualified to sales qualified?
Yeah, look, that's that's the question, right? And I think the definition varies. I personally believe in the client. Look, I don't work with a lot of transactional businesses because I think that's a little bit of a different game, like shopping cart type stuff and a run rate type of business where you're just flipping conversions over on the daily, right? But when I am able to help people, it's when the sales cycle is a little longer, a little bit more complex. So most of your SaaS and your enterprise software, your large scale professional service type stuff. So what I hear continuously is that it's really, even though all the metrics might be right for it to be quote unquote sales qualified, until I am actually engaged and until I have an open channel of communication and I know the lay of the land and I know the buying signal, not the buying signals, but the buying process within that company or that opportunity, it's not a real lead that I'm actually going to go hunt for. So, and again, it varies depending upon what methodology they're using, and you can go on and on like that. But that's what I'm talking about with the story matters, right? Is because that gap between the, hey, this is all the right signals are here, to, hey, this is a real deal, we should hunt. There's a gap there, right? So I think we need to fill that gap to empower the salespeople to have those conversations that help them get engaged, that help them discern the lay of the land, that help them find the decision makers and translate, oh yeah, there's a real issue here that they're ready to part ways with their money with.
So when you talk about story and how that fits in, are you talking about the company's story in terms of, like we always reference the Simon Sinek TEDx talk about people don't care what you do, they care why you do it. And, it's like sort of your reason for being. Is it kind of like telling your company's story or, in an engaging way? Or do you mean something else, is more like the buyer's story?
No, I love that you brought up Simon's talk because I think it's popular for a reason because that resonates with people. And
Mhm.
I look at it and I approach it this way: is that if you look, everything we do, well, actually, here's a tale that I tell a lot of times to make this point. When I was a child growing up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, I was probably 10 maybe. It was early summertime, and my dad was headed out to work, and the trash guys were making their ways through the neighborhood. And some neighborhood kids were always like to make fun of these trash guys, right, for whatever reason. And I never, my dad, wasn't. He always kind of chastised them, told them, not bother these guys doing their job. So he told me, he's like, look, we look at those guys, and these kids down the street are making fun of them because they have this menial job and they're taking our garbage away, right? But that's not how I look at it, he said. The way I look at it is that they have a critical job for our street, for our neighborhood, and indeed for our entire community. Because if these guys didn't do their job, trash piles up, it becomes a dirty neighborhood. If it becomes a dirty neighborhood, we get infested with rats. If we get infested with rats, then maybe there's disease. If there's disease, then maybe your little brother dies, because he gets sick. And my dad was like being dramatic about it, right? But, he was making a point is that these guys' job, even though it looks menial to you on the surface, is incredibly important. And they're not taking trash away. They're keeping the community safe and healthy. And I tell you what, Kyle, I never forgot that, right? So to me, that's where the essence of our story lies, is what is the true impact to what you're doing to the lives of the people that are using or consuming your product or your service.
Wow. That's deep.
Very deep.
I like that.
Deep.
Yeah.
We used to run an agency, and I think we struggle with that to a degree. I think we've gotten a little better with it now. Is that everybody wants to hear like, oh, what's your agency story? And I think a lot of agencies struggle to come up with it because really it's a lot of them. Well, number one, don't really have a lot of formal sales training or experience. They're usually marketers or designers or developers or somebody who started a business now that have to learn how to sell. But then it's also hard to when people ask what you do. Oh, we build websites. Oh, we help people increase sales through marketing. We help drive leads. But getting to that deeper, that Simon Sinek kind of level, or what you just said is like you're not just taking out trash, you're keeping the community safe. It's really hard for people to dig that deep. How can they do it?
It is hard, right? And I think that's why we've gotten so locked into the marketing tyranny of metrics that I talked about earlier, right? Because that's a safer place for us to live, right? And it's funny, you talk about agencies. I would agree with you there. I think professional marketers are frustrated when they bring an agency in that can't help them tap into this, right? And I think there's like what professional marketers want, where the agency is concerned, is to bring help in, whether it's the PR agency or the creative agency or the digital marketing agency, to help them kind of be a player coach almost, right? And unfortunately, I think most agencies are so worried about their margins and making sure that the right rate, and they care about their billable hours. And these are all operational necessities of their business, right? But those operational necessities don't help me tap into the nature of my story, right? So to answer your question, how do we get there? Well, look, I think going to watch that Simon Sinek talk is probably a good first place, because even though it's 20 minutes or so, I would watch it again and again, because he gets to the whole essence of why we're doing something. And you guys have read that book, Lean Startup?
I think I've read the Cliff Notes. I have to admit, I haven't actually read the whole thing.
Well, there's a story in there. I read it a couple years ago, so I could be a little off on this, but there's a story about Kanban in the manufacturing world. And Kanban's like an agile technology, right? And it was the 5 whys of why something happened. And I'm going to butcher the story, but the essence was, it was a car manufacturer and something broke down on the line. And the immediate question to why something broke down on the line was because the gear was worn. But they kind of stepped back. Okay, why was the gear worn? Okay, the gear worn was because of X. Okay, why did X happen? And they kept stepping back and asking why. And then they realized that it was an inefficiency in their process and in their training of certain technicians, right? It wasn't the gear itself. So that was like ultimately the why. So to me, if you want to get to that, there's 2 things really to get at the bottom of your story. One, ask those questions. Why? Why do people use your product and service? Like, honest to goodness, why? It's a tedious exercise, but get to the bottom of it. And then secondly, we have to remember that story is about status quo, some kind of conflict, and some resolution. I mean, if you think about every great story, every great movie you've ever seen, right? Like think about, I'm out of the Philadelphia area, so I always use Rocky as an example. So the first Rocky film is a great film, right? It was this down and out boxer. He gets a shot to fight the champ, and at the end he doesn't win, but he goes the distance and he wins the girl, right? So there's status quo, down and out boxer. The conflict, gets to fight the champ, and the resolution, he goes the distance and finds the girl. That's the heart of every story, and we all have it. Like everything. Look at the garbage man story I just did a couple seconds ago, right? Like if you get to the bottom of the why and then try to connect it to the 3 elements of story, then I guarantee you're going to get a lot more out of what you're doing and how you're communicating to your customer base.
God, I love that.
I mean, you think about our why is pretty compelling for Proposify, helping people save time and money, and we lived that pain point. So I think that makes a big difference for what we're doing now compared to what we did before.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of it's just thinking of your customers as people, and like you're not just doing something, you're not just designing something or building software. Like, how are you making people's lives better? And I think everybody can probably connect those dots somehow. If, like you say, if you dig deep enough, if you ask why enough times, you'll eventually get to the heart of it.
Yeah, it's true. And look, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It could be a tedious exercise because there's like wordsmithing you have to do, and nobody really wants to go through the pain of figuring out what that why is. It's not an easy thing to do. This is why I don't think many people do it, because it's easier to go rely on tweaking the A/B test on your latest email campaign so you get a bigger conversion rate.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds me of, I think there's a Louis C.K. bit that he does about his daughter asking him why, and every time he gives her an answer, she says why. And it starts with like, why is the sky blue? And then she just keeps asking why until he's like questioning his own existence and like the futility of even being alive. And like, it's a great bit. We should play that. But I think that is almost where people need to, get to with their own story, right? Is keep digging deeper.
Absolutely.
So let's say that talking to agencies here who maybe haven't gone through this exercise, let's say they've done it, they've come up with a compelling story, they can now effectively tell that. As I kind of alluded to before, a lot of agencies don't have what we would typically call like a tight sales process, right? A lot of them respond to RFPs. Some of them just wait for kind of leads to come in, people emailing them, oh, so-and-so referred you, or we saw this work you did and, we want to chat. But it's all very unpredictable. And this is one of the biggest problems that people tell me, especially people that run agencies, it's just the lead generation process and nurturing it and just having like an actual process behind it. Is there anything that you've seen in your experience, because you've gone from when you were telling your story before about starting off kind of in the enterprise SaaS space and now kind of then moving through like service-based businesses? Is there anything that you can kind of learn or have learned from the enterprise space and how agencies can kind of steal some of those maybe strategies or tactics to build their own businesses and their own sales pipeline?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The one that agencies should definitely take time exploring, right? And like, I don't want to, I also think that there's a need for, I don't want to use the word commodity, but it's the only kind of word that's coming to mind. I mean, there's a need for creative work to be done quickly and within a certain margin. I mean, that's a reality, right? But that said, I think that what agencies, especially in the enterprise space, want to try. Now, let me give you another anecdote. And if you guys haven't gathered by now, like, this kind of speak in anecdotes, because I think it makes it easier for me to get my point across. I wrote a blog post. I have a good friend of mine. She runs an agency out in Indianapolis. They're called Element 3. Her name's Tiffany Souter. And they're great. They've had some phenomenal growth. And I write for them every now and again. And I wrote this piece about who owns the marketing story. And look, not everybody thinks the way I do if they're running marketing. Like, I am really passionate about story. I kind of, whenever I have a team that I'm working with, I make sure they invest in that. But that's not true of most marketing professionals. I think I'm kind of an outlier. I don't think most people in the marketing professions think this way initially. They might get here, but they don't start out that way, right? So this content director for Element 3 kind of pushed back a little bit. He says, no, listen, you can't put this up on our blog, because one of the things we differentiate in is that we're going to help you tap into your story. And at first, and I'll be honest, I kind of bristled. I was like, yeah, I don't really know if I agree with that. But then I kind of took a step back and I said, okay, I get it. And then if I really considered it with more sincerity, I realized that, okay, what I want as a marketing professional is I want to present the raw material, and I want to let them know, here's where we're headed, here's our strategy, here's the nature of the personas that we're trying to chase, here's what they care about, and then work collaboratively with that agency to come up with a really strong story. So kind of act as be the director of the film and not the actor, if you will, right? Or be the director but not the writer. It's a better analogy, right? So where I want the agency to come in and provide that great writing. And if you think about great directors, right? Think about like Scorsese, right? Some of his best films he did not write; he directed them, right? Yeah. So he didn't come up with the story; he directed the story, right? So I think if an agency could help me see that better, especially in the enterprise space, because look, in the enterprise world, let's look at SaaS, where we care about churn rate, we care about recurring revenue, right? Agency needs to understand those metrics intimately, and they need to understand what the impact is if there's a 2% drop off or increase in churn. So if there's a 2% increase in churn, that's a very big negative for a enterprise SaaS company. I mean, something's wrong, and we have to do something about it. So the mix there is not just the new subscriptions, but it's also the retention. So there's a story in both those areas, right? So if the agency understands those metrics, and then they could use the creative element of identifying what happens in the situation where churn goes up and down. Now they can embed themselves into the company itself and be that creative kind of force that helps tell that bigger story. And ultimately, and here's look, story doesn't make a difference at all if I can't connect it to the realities of the sales process and the customer support process and even how I hire and fire, right? So that's look, I think, and this is why agencies don't want to do this, because that's a tall task, right? Like I have to invest a lot of time to intimately know my marketplace and my customer that way. And it's easier to manage my margin to 19%, right? So that's why they don't do it. But what I can tell you, if you're able to do that, the margins go much higher because now you're much more valuable. And I'm going to put you on retainer. I'm going to keep you around. It's going to be an easy renewal for me next year because you're thinking about things that I haven't even considered yet.
Yeah. I think, probably one of the problems is agencies can be very, kind of have blinders on and just very focused on their thing. Like, our job is, we're your PPC agency. Our job is to like bring down your cost of lead. So if, at the end of the month, we look at what we've done, we go, okay, we lowered your cost of lead, but they're not looking at the rest of the pipeline, churn, retention, did the lifetime value go up? It's just like, we did this one thing. That's all you hired us to do. We did it. They don't look at the bigger picture.
No, you're right. And guess what? If that's all if you fix your value only to that one thing, then that's the highest your value will ever go, right? So your margins will never increase, right? If you affix your value to the longer tail there, as you just described it, and actually, there's a great agency in Philadelphia called Seer, SEER, and I know the owner a little bit. He was on my podcast not too long ago, but they started out as an SEO agency. But if you look at what they're doing now, they really do a lot of this. So you should, I don't want to plug my own episode here, but if you go look up the guy's name's Will Reynolds on Leading Matters, it's a great one to listen to because that's what they do. They go that extra mile to better understand the nuance of who their customers are, what their story is, and why people should care.
Yeah. No, we'll definitely post a link to that in the show notes. And I think it's like that saying about like dressing for the job you want, not the job you have. It's almost like the agencies that do go above and beyond, they might lose money on that job, but if you can sort of over deliver, at least especially when you're starting out, I think, to kind of build your name, then you can start, now you've got a case study you can build around that. You don't have to tell people how much you charged or how much money you lost on it, but you can say, we actually did this for this client, and then charge other clients for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think sometimes we have to make an investment in our own future, right? And look again, as a solo entrepreneur who needs revenue, right? I know that sometimes I got to chase the revenue. I mean, that's just a fact of business, right? But I can't do that at risk of not investing in what I believe in and what I'm selling, right? And the value that I want to bring to the table. So I think, look, I don't want to mitigate it, or I don't want 8 people that are listening that are within an agency that do care about their margins. That is important, right? But as you just said, I think investing in this in a way where you could show demonstrable positive movement for your clients, then that's going to go a long way. And then maybe this time next year, your margins creep up by 2-3%.
I mean, I always had this experience. I think, Kevin, you probably remember. I don't know if other people who run agencies have this as well, but it's like sometimes the job that you're most excited about and most passionate about, or it's the most fun job, or it's something you're really like excited, it offers a lot of creative opportunity that you want to put in your portfolio or whatever. They tend to be the less profitable ones. Whereas sometimes the most boring projects, the one that you're not even like, you don't even want to tell people you did, are just the cash cows. Yep. I don't know if it's that way for everyone. It's always the way it seemed to work out, but we always want the best of all worlds, the best client with the most interesting project that's also profitable. Very hard to come by those ones.
Yeah, it is. I agree with you on that. And one thing I do, personally to kind of reconcile that is, look, there's things, and you could tell I'm a little passionate about these subjects, right? Yeah. Maybe a little, to a fault, maybe. But what I always try to do is listen. I always try to find, look, this is my passion. This is what I care about, right? But there's also purpose in what I'm doing, right? And those boring jobs, there's purpose in them too. There's story in there too, right? So I try to find that intersection of where, this is where my passion lies. Here's the intersection of purpose and passion. So if I'm living in that intersection, then even if it's the most boring job, most profitable job in the world, I'm going to be satisfied with that because I'm using my passion in like a purposeful way.
That's awesome. Love everything you're saying, Joel. And I think for people listening, if they want to hear more from you, if they want to kind of check out some more of your content, where can they go to hear more?
Sure, Kyle. Thanks for asking. So I actually have something that will, I think, help your agency clients connect sales and marketing a little bit better, and it's focused on the idea of customer advocacy. So we just talked about how do you get customers within those case studies to sing your praises in a way that doesn't sound like they're shilling for you, but shares their experience. So I have this 10-minute kind of training video on how to improve that, and your audience can find that at joelcap.com/beer, since we're agencies drinking beer, right? So it's joelcap.com/beer, and you'll find that 10-minute video. Other place you could find me, joelcap.com is obviously my website, and then pretty active on my Facebook page. That's Joel Cap on Facebook, so you can send me a note there, and I'm always quick to get back to people. And then lastly, you go on my homepage is my podcast. There's a lot of agency types there that you might want to listen to, so including that Will Reynolds episode that I mentioned. So those are other places you could find me, and I'd love to chat with you if anyone has questions about these things.
That's great. And for people that listen to this podcast on the Proposify site, we will also have some links in the show notes, so you don't have to remember those URLs. Thank you so much, Joel, for being on the show. You were awesome.
You know what? It's like I said, maybe I'm passionate to a fault about these things, but I love an opportunity to talk about it and share it. So I thank you guys for having me on.
All right.
Yeah, thanks, Joel.
Take care. Thanks for listening to this episode of Agencies Drinking Beer. If you enjoyed it, we'd appreciate it if you rate and or review us on the iTunes Store. If you have a story or lesson to share with other agency owners and managers from around the world, hit us up. Just email Kyle or Kevin at proposify.biz. And also, if you write business proposals and you want to make that process a whole lot easier and more streamlined, check out proposify.biz and sign up for a free 30-day trial. Cheers!